All right, welcome to the first podcast.
Welcome. This is going to be your first attempt, and we're going to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're actually doing here, who we are, what you can expect from the podcast.
So, my name is Alexander Becker. I was born in Venezuela. I'm 21 years old. Yes, a little bit about my family. I have a Venezuelan father, a German mother, and I grew up in both countries. So, I spent some years in Venezuela, then I moved to Germany, was there for 4 years, returned, went to a German school in Venezuela. There I met Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Then came back for 1 year in Rostock, Germany again, and then returned once again to Venezuela, finished my high school, got the German Abitur, and now since then I'm living here in Heidelberg studying economics.
Yes, my name is Jesus. I also come from Venezuela. I'm 22 years old. Both my parents come from Venezuela. My father comes from Caracas, which is the capital city, and my mother comes from the center of Venezuela. I came to Germany when I was 8 years old because my father was researching here for a year, and then that year I went to a German school as a little kid. And when I went back to Venezuela, my parents thought to themselves, well, if you already know a little bit of German, let's send you to the German school. And that's where we met. We graduated as well in the same school. I also did both the Venezuelan and the German Abitur. And then I came here to Heidelberg as well and study economics. Just as him, I'm almost ready with my studies. And yeah, I think a little bit of what we have in common. It's a lot, but
Yeah, so I think the commonalities we're both from Venezuela. I think we could consider ourselves quite privileged, so we came from privileged families. We went to a good school. We learned German, Spanish, English. We never experienced hunger.
Nope.
We had all the things we would ever need, all the material things. And yes, we both come from academics. Our parents are academics.
Yeah.
And my family is quite politic. I come from so that's why I have also quite an interest in politics. And I guess that's why I also study economics. So yes, I think one thing that really marked us or shaped us is Venezuela, the country. Recently, it became a socialist dictatorship, and we saw firsthand how poverty was rising. We could see almost every day people searching food in the trash.
Yep.
Because they had no food.
Yep.
At home. Even children. There's practically no stability in Venezuela. Sometimes we don't have internet, sometimes we don't have electricity, sometimes we don't have water.
Yep.
And you could see year after year everything getting worse. And yet we came from this privileged family and we got almost everything we needed. But we know that not everyone in Venezuela did have that.
Yeah.
So how would you say did we handle that?
Yeah, I mean, well, just perhaps very quickly to add to that. I mean, perhaps it's important to know. I mean, of course, we're privileged in some sense, and of course, we are very thankful for that. But I think it's important to remember what privilege means. So in general, like what it means to be privileged in Europe is very different to what it means in Venezuela. And even though we were very privileged in that sense, meaning that we had food and that we had a school to go to and that we had a computer, whatever, we had access to information. we still suffer the consequences of the destruction of the country.
Yes.
Basically, we didn't have the freedom that is normal. We couldn't just walk on the streets whenever we wanted because we had to be scared that someone was going to kill us or steal something or whatever. And it sounds exaggerated, but that's how it is. And what we did about that, to answer your question, I think that it marked us in a way where we decided to take responsibility. So to say, we know how corrupt and destructive the world is, and seeing all the destruction around us, it sort of makes you realize the importance of not adding, being a positive force and not creating even more harm that is already there, and to try to change something. And especially in this came thinking, right? So thinking, educating yourself is key in distinguishing good from bad. And I think that's something where we have always agreed upon, and it has to do with the podcast. No, want to say something about that?
Yeah, so I think sometimes people who think they are privileged, like I am really grateful for all the things I had. As you say, it's relative. Like if we compare ourselves to all the friends we have here in Germany, we don't really had any more things than they had, probably even less. But it's relative to our other friends in Venezuela and people in Venezuela in general. But what we did with that privilege is we didn't felt bad for it, or yes, we said, okay, yes, that's the things we have, and we have to make the most of it.
Exactly.
And maybe someday we can improve things in Venezuela and give the opportunity to as many people as we can to have the same privilege as we had in that moment. So
the opportunity, that's for me the key issue. Like people at least have a shot, a fair shot. Yeah,
exactly. So, and I think that made us this mentality grew inside us of improving ourselves and getting better, and this also meant putting truth and reason above all things, because it's really important for us to see the world as it is, not as we would like it to be, but first as it is, and then maybe what we should do about it. And
yeah, I mean, if don't want to interrupt, but you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of reality.
Yes.
And it's key, right? I mean, what you say, you have to be willing to see things as they are, and that's the only way that you can be effective in life. Like it doesn't matter whatever your goal is. You have to see things as they are and to use that information to follow the goals that you have. And if you remain with stigmas and superstitions and so on, and I mention this because in Venezuela that happens a lot, right? So there are many cultural, religion, politics, many topics which are just untouchable, and people like refuse reason, and that doesn't help you grow. So
yes, so that's why I think we like the Socratic method.
We didn't invent it; it already existed.
Yes. Thanks, Socrates. So the Socratic method is a form of cooperative, argumentative dialogue between individuals, based on asking and answering questions to stimulate critical thinking and to draw out ideas and underlying presuppositions. That's the definition in Wikipedia.
Yep.
And well, to all the people who are thinking, you can't know the truth, the absolute truth. Of course, it's no human being can know all the things that can be known and get to the absolute truth. That's impossible, but we still try to move forward to it. And
you can't achieve absolute reality or a perfection in knowledge, but the only option you have is emotions. And between emotions and reason, I think reason should guide your actions more than feelings.
yes, and now we can transition why we are doing this podcast.
Mm.
So I think it's mostly like a journey we are doing together,
Mm.
and we want to learn how is the world, how does it function,
Mm.
and create our own ideas about it. So of course we can't do it ourselves.
Mm.
We need other perspectives, other views, and talk and discuss about them. And so that's why I was very interested when you mentioned to make this podcast, because it helps. Yes, it helps us to move in this direction of learning and to create a better view and a consistent idea about the people, about the world, and also about ourselves.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a part of that. Yeah, I mean that's also where I came from. So I just the idea of how this came about is that I was thinking about there were elections at the university, Stura-Wahl they're called. So it's basically the student council, and they had sort of this app where you could like give your opinion on different issues, and then it would tell you who you should vote for. And I read some of those, and like there were topics there which, I mean, I'm a student and I have never heard anybody talking about them, and some of them where I harshly disagree. And I don't know, I was quite surprised to see that people are voting on these issues, and I think most people don't discuss about them at all. And what I sort of hoped is to create sort of a platform where everybody who's interested can engage in those ideas, see the other side, right? And exactly for your intention, because I can read a lot of books, I can inform myself about a million of things, but the moment where I really find out if what I believe is true is in the battlefield of ideas, this desk.
Yes.
And to have like I don't want to say opponent, but a good opponent or a worthy opponent. Again, opponent is not the right word because it's more cooperation than conflict. To sort of point out where the mistakes are. So this doesn't make sense because of this. And from there is that you grow, and we can talk about it all day, but we need new insight, right? So I know more or less where you stand on most things, and you know where I stand. And we already learned so much that sometimes we need somebody else.
Yeah, so it's not about being right. It's more about you describing the best way you can, your perspectives, and based only on reason and no emotions. And yes,
or at least primarily reason. I mean,
of course. Yeah, it's not like we are not humans and we don't feel anything.
No.
So, and on top of that, there are a lot of other things that I can learn making a podcast. For one thing is when you're recording this and people are listening to this, it's just you speak differently.
Yeah,
you're more focused and try to be more precise in your speech.
Yeah.
And yes, that's it's just so many things that we like and also reflect about ourselves. We doing this podcast that I just thought, okay, let's do it.
Yep.
And of course, we don't plan to do this podcast alone. We too. So as you said, it's probably not that good if we agree on all things.
Yeah.
That's not the idea, because then there is no battlefield. There's just me and you agreeing almost on anything, on everything. And so we want to find people who disagree with us and change our minds. And we probably will be talking about controversial, maybe provocative things. Maybe we will be misunderstood. but we are more than willing to risk all of that to create more accurate and consistent ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I think also on this issue of controversy, you need to be able to have no taboos when it comes to logic and thinking. Like you cannot leave a corner behind because it's an uncomfortable topic. And I think that most of the times when it comes to these controversial issues, even people where sometimes we hold like very sharp disagreements, right? So the other extreme as well. If you talk to them about it, mostly, there are exceptions, but mostly, if you talk to them in a calm and normal way, you will find out that actually you have more in common than you think most of the time. So at the end, it's those are the most fruitful discussions, I think, or conversations, when the people are on the other side and you risk being offensive, you risk being provocative, and at the end, it turns out that it was worth it. So that's sort of the people that I would like to come to the podcast, right?
Yes, and this also means that we are not, our arguments are not ready. They are not perfect. So as we're talking here and also with other people, we try to improve them. And
they never will.
And the only way to do that is testing them. So of course, we don't like to be proven wrong.
Nobody does.
It's not that we really genuinely enjoy it, but we like being on the truth.
Yeah,
being on the side of the truth, and we like that more than the negative feelings we feel when someone just destroys our arguments.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, even if what matters to you is being right, even then, you should always recognize when you're wrong, because in the long run, you aren't. So even if you look at it that way, however you want to slice it, if it is because you want reason, which is my case and your case, I believe as well. But even if you always want to be right, even if that's your intention, you should also, I believe, listen to everybody. But well, I mean, I was gonna talk about now about the style of the podcast, or do you want to add something else?
No, it's okay. Let's begin with the style.
Yeah, I mean, so the idea we're discussing now, and this might change, is that basically, as we told, we find somebody that we want to talk about, and perhaps first a topic that interests us. We do some research, and then we find somebody who's actually interested to talk about that, or perhaps the other way around, right? Perhaps somebody wants to talk to us about a specific issue, and he knows about the issue. We find it interesting. We invite him in, and he can try to convince us. So
yes, but so that our guests are not, our future guests hearing this are not afraid. It's not both of us against them.
There is no against.
There is no against, of course, but we're trying to. One of us would be like the moderator, trying to be more focused on the general direction of the discussion, and that person would be more neutral, and then the other one of us would be taking one side, or his opinion, and
the other side. Yeah, and what's important about that is, as we said before, we want this to be more like a reason and talking about it in a respectful manner, and so it's important that somebody is there to guide the discussion, and hopefully not, like it so often is, not just getting to name calling or just saying false arguments, or really get to the bottom of it in a respectful way. And that's why it's better to have a moderator, I believe, sometimes.
Yes. So, for whom is this podcast? I think it's, everyone who likes what we're talking about can listen to this. Maybe for whom isn't this podcast?
Well, a lot of people. If you don't like your ideas to be challenged, this is not for you. Don't listen to it. If you are easily offended by somebody stating an opinion that is not yours, this is not for you. If you're not interested in improving yourself, this is not for you. What else? yeah, I think that's sort of the main thing.
Yeah. You said if you don't like being challenged with new different ideas, and if you don't tolerate also people making some mistakes, well, we are here more or less improvising.
Yeah.
And yes, along the way we will make some mistake, maybe say something that isn't factual.
Or not what we meant, right?
Yes. Or yes, we didn't express it right. And if you don't tolerate that mistake, then it's also not for you.
Yeah. Yeah, perhaps you want to talk about briefly to end about different topics which we have been thinking about?
Yes. So we are using this app called Notion. It's like a note-taking app where you can publish the pages also online. And we have here like a table with different categories. So the categories we have is economics, life, politics, philosophy, history, and also the environment.
Yeah.
So how we wanted to do is we think about an issue, a topic that interests us. We put it in a category, write it down, maybe write us a short essay, writing our position.
Yep.
And then we will put the link down below in the comments, in the description.
Yep.
And you can pick one, and if you like it, if you think you can talk about it, and you don't agree with our position,
ideally, yes,
then you can come to this podcast and
and it's mostly like issues where I think there are good discussions to be had, right? So this is not necessarily issues where it's clear cut like that, where there's, for example, like inequality, right? So it's such a huge issue, right? There's so many things to be said about so many different issues. If you think that one of those, you have a good position, you have done some research, want to come here, want to convince us, that's what we do this for. That's the idea.
Yes. And well, if you don't want to talk on our podcast, you can also write the comments on the YouTube videos. We are also happy to engage there. So yes.
Yep. That's about it. That's the idea. We already have one podcast planned. We already have the first victim. Kidding. The first interviewer.
Our special guest.
Yeah, and he's a very special guest. He's a good friend of mine. So you can expect that somewhere around next week. And we hope that you will be there.
Yeah, so we will put the link down below. You can see all the different topics and our positions on them. And then you can also expect to see them. And well, we can also receive some feedback on what topics people care most about.
Yeah.
Maybe
or any feedback at all. If there's something you don't like, please let us know so we can improve. Yeah. Yeah,
so that's about it, I think. Thanks for listening. I hope you come with us in this journey, in this ride, and
keep on thinking.
Exactly. So that's Weststadt Podcast, and see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.